Hello, everybody, and welcome to a critical look from behind that suit where we talk about stuff that's not music. And Bonnie and I here, HSR,
Hey.
are continuing on with Dear White People. This time we're at chapter 4.
And this one's all about Coco.
Coleandra, I believe her name is.
Colandria?
Colandria, yeah. And yeah, this is a cool episode. There was a lot. This was really dense, so
Yeah.
I apologize if it gets scattered. It's like 11:30 p.m. It's been a very long day for us.
Yep.
So yeah, it starts off and it addresses the death of the guy from the last episode, and basically had a low GPA and he liked to jump and shit. And it links into the Dear Black People party from the first episode.
Yeah, and like how like Coco encountered him at the party, and like their sort of weird encounter, and how he was kind of shocked that her makeup was so good for the blackface, and then touched her face like to see like if it was coming off, and then realized that she was actually a black person.
And then she turns around and boom, Sam is there
with the camera in her face
and films her saying some shit like, you know what, these people don't give a fuck, right?
About Harriet Tubman.
But any of the shit that they're trying to accomplish, these people just don't care. Basically saying everything you're doing is moot because they care about their fancy thises and that's and whatever.
Yeah.
And so this gets caught on camera, right?
Gets recorded.
And then we jump into this scene where she's in a room and she gets an envelope to some secret party, which turns out is with all the white girls at some fancy ass
like
sorority thing, right? And she's with like the Muffy girl, who, as we know, is one of the political opponents of Troy from before when the election was happening. So this isn't just like regular shit. This is like the hoity-toity, like top end white girl.
I think I actually had written down hoity-toity.
And so like some debutante shit, and they're all talking and whatnot. And then we find out Dear White People's back on the radio with a disclaimer. And then it's just back into it.
Yeah.
And
then like Sam had like auto-tuned like what Coco had said at the party. And then like so she went and confronted her.
Well, but just before that, it was like a little segment called Woke or Not. So woke being like, are you paying attention? Are you aware? Are you sleeping, right? And then she first calls out Troy for pardoning the guy who blackmailed him.
Like with black issues, particularly.
Yeah. And because he pardoned the head of the satire club who had blackmailed him into that social pardon, per se, right? Mm-hmm. And then he goes in on Coco with the auto-tune remix. And then, yeah, they go and confront her at the radio station.
And, yeah, she's pretty hard. She's like, yeah, of course I'm woke, like... And then she kind of, like, calls her out on her being more light-skinned, and that she's, you know, she gets away with a lot more because she can look more like them, like referring to white people as the them, whereas she is actually quite dark-skinned, and so she's had to live with being, like, a dark-skinned black woman for her entire life, and how that has caused her a lot of, like, social anxiety, and, like, to be, like, an outcast, and to be like the last person chosen, and has had a lot of, you know, consequences to deal with just because of the color of her skin.
And it's interesting, right? Because it starts to show the split between just black women and I guess another tier of this spectrum that I suppose a lot of white folk might be completely ignorant to. So I thought it was a really cool episode. And
later on we find out that like the white girls like kind of bitching about like how unfair and how tough like, you know, it is being like a white woman because of like the patriarchy and blah 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 blah. So it's just like interesting. It's like everyone has like their own problems, but it just
so
it seems to just get easier, kind of, I guess, the
whiter
you are.
And then we like jump back in time to like when this girl when Coco first arrives at the university and they're getting assigned to their various dorm places, and she was like, what, I'm in the black dorm, are you fucking kidding me? Like I applied for everything else, and the administration's like, yep, no, you're there, go. And then Sam shows up like, hey, blackface. And we can see that they like...
She's like, hey, black person.
Yeah, and they meet like, on day one, and they become kind of BFFs, and they kind of become closer.
They roommates, they live together.
But you can tell that they're coming from really different places, right? So Sam's really enraged.
Like, Sam apparently didn't even know that she was black until she was like not invited to a party.
Yeah, like we find that out a bit later
in grade
on.
2.
But like we find out that like Coco starts to drop these comments along the way. It's like, listen, I've been woke before. Like I was born woke. You have no fucking idea like what you're even saying. And we start approaching this issue of where like Sam clearly is radical and pushing all this stuff and wants to like lead the charge and be this charismatic voice of change and say a lot of the right things. But this is because it's a new struggle for her. And honestly...
And, like, you see her at the beginning, like, as, like, a freshman, and she's, I guess, very white-looking, if that's, like, I don't think that's an appropriate thing to say, but, like, like, in that sense is that she's looking more like the rest of, like, the other sorority-type girls, like, these other, like, white girls. So she probably went to, like, a more, like, white, maybe a private high school or something like that. So she probably has that kind of influence. Whereas Coco being, blacker and darker.
Look at, like, the hair, right? Sam's hair is just like perfectly black and puffy and all this great shit, and Coco has perfectly straight. And this is like a Europeanized like standard of beauty. Like you try to make your hair white or you straighten it. You do all these crazy shit.
Very like kind of proper.
And it was really interesting because then inside of, like, when they get into the black sorority house thing, right, we find out there's the different groups. And at first, the Black Student Union more or less...
kicks them out. Like
yeah, and specifically because, like, Sam's kind of too white to be in it. And then, the death of some 17-year-old happens. And... No, sorry. Before that, we start to have this other subplot where we're looking at the beauty standards of black women. And all Coco wants to do is get laid. She's a horny young woman. She's ready to go. And she keeps going to different things. The black guys don't. She goes
to this party.
But even before then, the black guys kind of overlook her. She knows that they're not really desirable because they talk about it earlier on.
Except for this one guy who she meets. And, like, he's, like, such a gentleman.
But, like, she had, like, made a comment earlier on in the episode where it was like, I don't want to deal with the black guys because, the kind of comments they make. You look pretty good for a dark-skinned girl and whatever.
Oh.
And then...
and the Sam and Coco were talking about, like, when they were hanging out with the sorority girls. And then I think Sam had said, just because... Dear white people, just because you have a black dildo doesn't mean you're having an interracial relationship.
Yeah, and they start kind of showing how the premise for Dear White People actually came from their little joking interactions, and it turned into a thing.
Originally, it seemed like it was Coco's
idea and
like tagline or whatever,
and then Sam kind of ran with it.
And
then you kind of see how Sam's kind of doing this for the glory a bit, right, throughout the episode, as like they're sitting at one point right after this guy. So she goes, I'm getting ahead. So she also goes to this white party where at the white place basically everyone stands around and guys come up and kiss you and then go fuck you or whatever, right? Whatever, college parties, I guess. It's kind of weird.
It's like a place to pick up.
And
it's like a Midsummer's Night's Dream or something.
She goes with like her 3 white friends who are from this clique, and literally each of her friends gets taken.
And she's like the last person,
and nobody took her. And we just get the general feeling nobody wants her. Now we know she's fucking Troy, but we watch.
And she just got her hair did.
Then we also watch as she's trying to get the attention. She's watching Troy go after this girl, and then this head of the sorority. So she goes into the sorority and tries to be her. And this sorority, whatever. So she's going through, and this starts to create like a rift between Sam and Coleandra, because Sam, we find out that at the end of that party, this kid dies. The news is all over. The cops get let off. Another situation. Yeah. And all these, they're getting all enraged and shit. And Sam's all like, man, nobody's doing anything. It's whatever. And you just see like Coco is just like, you know what? It's just another one. Like, you can tell that she's come from this. She's seen this every day where she grows up. And so she knows how useless a lot of these things like sit-ins and how these aimless protests don't change anything. They just make you maybe feel better. Yeah. She's like, I don't want to deal with this. I can't. And she, like, puts on her headphones and she zones out. And then later on, you're at, like, this table as they're kind of discussing the whole group. And Sam gets up all passionate, like, this is what we got to do, and starts to earn the respect. And then the next thing you know, she gets into the black student union.
Even though it was Coco's idea.
Yeah.
And then Sam stands up and says it, and then that's when, like, she gets more the invite to come to, like, the exclusive party.
Right.
But Coco is also invited because she's kind of, like, with them.
And then so what ends up happening is Coco becomes a pledge for, like, the hoity-toity black girls.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, Sam ends up with the black student union thing, and you just start to see this riff where, like,
they're going their separate ways, but, like, fighting for what they believe in.
And you can see how Coco is trying to establish herself in a position of power long term, playing the game the way it needs to be played because it's the easiest way to survive. And she just, she knows that a lot of these protests and blah, blah, blah aren't going to make a difference because the people aren't really willing to listen. So she's pandering to play the game. And Sam's like, you're the problem. And Coco's like, you're an idiot.
Calls her, like, a selfish bitch, and then, like, tells her she doesn't want to live with her anymore.
And they start having problems over, like, this ideology. And it's a really interesting chasm between, do you play the game or do you protest the system? And as much as this is, like, manifested in the way it's done in the show, I find this is a huge choice a lot of people need to make. And it's pretty much everyone. Like, do you go to work or do you go to that protest? Do you go do this? Like these are all choices that people have to make. And I really appreciated how they put it in with these specifics because they were really interesting specifics. But yeah, so then as things progress, we find out that the black sorority that Coco's pledging at is just all kind of full of shit and doesn't really take her seriously and wants Sam.
And then she like calls them all out too on, like, their shit. And like says, like, oh, well, quits. You're like a slut and, like, whatever.
You're this. And then, interestingly enough, Troy is showing to go after Sam, which is kind of adding to it all. Yeah. So the whole way through, it's almost like Sam, the lighter-skinned girl, just because of whatever, is being drawn into everything so easily. She's getting the guy. She's getting all the attention.
She gets everything. Like, as a black woman,
Coco
she gets life a
ends
little bit
up,
easier.
like, not even in a club and hanging out with all the white girls.
She's trying so damn hard.
And then she gets a perm at one point, and it's really, like, painful. So they smoke a joint, and I guess it's the first time.
It's not a perm. It's like a straight.
Or yeah, straight weave. That's what it was.
It's a weave.
And it was all painful. So they smoke a joint and everything, and then this gets thrown in Coco's face later on, and then at the very.
But at the end, like, Sam offers her as, like, a peace offering, like a joint, and then, like, she uses that, like, because she ends up getting, like, a booty call kind of from Troy as well.
And
so
this is
obviously,
more like
present
day.
Coco knows that, like, him and Sam were
a thing. We know they were a thing.
But now she's got the man.
Right? And now she's with him, but she's a side chick still, right? Because even if you want to talk about that relationship a bit, right? Yeah. When it was with the lighter-skinned girl, it was public. He was touching her in public. You can see that she met the dad and everything. And here he's been fucking...
Now it's a lot sneakier.
Coco on the side, and he doesn't really want to make it official. She's like, you remember the Jackie O question from the previous episode?
Yeah.
It's clearly like... because she's this black woman and she's so dark and she's so whatever, that, like, you don't honestly want to be associated with her in that way. And it's like the girls who, I don't know, it's almost like she just doesn't seem to fit in. Like, she's just trying so hard.
She does try really hard, but she just can't seem to get a break.
Like, she's too black for the white people, and she's too white for these people, and everyone just looks at her like and all she wants to do is succeed, right? And you can tell that she's here to work, and she doesn't want to play the games. And she looks at it all like games. And it's interesting, right? Because a perspective like Coco is like, it's kind of like more of a, it is what it is. And I can't compromise my success point of view, right?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people lately kind of like rise up and rage and shit, like everything's so fucked up and rah, 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 rah. And we got to go out there and do a lot of stuff. And I started like even considering the physical act of going to protest and its effectiveness, or a sit-in. Like, they talk about sit-ins and things like that. Like, what is going to go sit in the dean's office going to accomplish, right?
That's true. That's what they're trying to say, but like, does it make a difference, or like, how do you know that it won't? Is what the question is asked.
And it really comes down to it. So from Coco's perspective, listen, man, if killing people and all this other stuff isn't going to make a difference, if fucking destroying Flint, Michigan and all this other shit's not going to make a difference, what the fuck is the point of your sitting? Is it really accomplishing anything? Or is it really just making you all feel better? Because I think that's what it's trying to point in, is that Sam is a drama queen with it, right? Now, I respect where she's coming from. That narcissism is used to fuel change, and her role in things is really interesting.
And she does come from, like, a good place, too. Like, she does mean well.
But, like, as was pointed out, she didn't really understand what being black was until she was neglected from a birthday party when she was in grade 2. That's, like, 7-8 years. And so it's almost like she doesn't fully grasp the magnitude of how deep the problem goes in it. And
Which is interesting.
And her trying to, like, rally everything and get enraged, it's almost like compensating. It's like, because she didn't struggle as much with it, she feels she has to try 15 times as hard to make it happen. And because not everyone else is feeling like she's feeling, she rages and lashes out and shit, which is understandable but unfortunate, right? And you can definitely see that kind of a conflict happening. And it's so interesting to watch the relationship between these two pan out. It was really cool to see this episode. It wasn't like so much pushing the timeline forward so much as this interesting historical context. And I really appreciated the time shifting in this show.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Like, to see, like, kind of like how things ended up the way that they are now. And then, like, we see, like, the peace offering joint that, like, she's offered at the end. Like, she's, like, smoking that while she's getting, like,
you're missing
Troy giving her head.
Yeah, so Troy's going down on her. But prior to that, he basically said, she was like, look, I can't do this. I'm not going to be your, like, fucking side hoe anymore. I might do some booty calls. So basically do something about it. And he did. He was like, listen, fine, why don't you come to the football game with me in front of everyone as my date, basically. Let's make it official and real. And then he said, so are you going to come? And then she's like, well, you tell me. And then she lights up the joint while he's going down. And it's like, you just see in this moment.
And, like, she feels so powerful and, like, strong at that moment.
Right, because she started getting into this power side of things, right? Because she was at this, so in, like, the present day, she was at this, like, secret debutante thing, right?
But I don't know if it really is. Like, I don't know. I got a little bit confused.
Because she got that, like, envelope in, like, her room, and then she ends up at the party, which is where the Dear White People thing. While she's at that party, right, and then the white guys try to fuck them and everything before she goes to try. Right. The sorority that she had tried to get into shows up and couldn't get into the party.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, come let us in, and, like, these are the ones that, like, she'd already, like, just called out, like, for being sluts and stuff.
Then, like,
and then she's like, do you know these girls? And she's like, yeah, I do. And then she's like, and then closes, like, the door in their face.
And then she's like, I just had my first power orgasm. So you can see that she's playing this game in a way where she's starting to get more confident. She's starting to get what she wants over time. It's just, it's weird, right?
She's going to be that, like,
it's almost crazy
tough and
how
strong, like, independent black girl.
And it's almost crazy how they're both selfish in such different ways. They both mean so well. They both come at it so differently. I enjoyed the dichotomy in this episode.
But, like, just, like, like, black people in general are striving for power. They're striving for power. Everything. And so it's like they're just trying to, like, get a one-up on each other, I think.
Well, it's just
before they can even start even dealing with the white people.
It's just across the world, there is, like, a realness to the whiter you are, the easier it is from all cultures. So, and from what I can tell based off of dating stats from Plenty of Fish and all these other people, they've made it abundantly clear nobody really likes black women. They're the least desirable people.
Which sucks.
And then the darker you are, from what I can tell, the harder it is. And it probably, I don't know. I have no idea how to appreciate the nature of what that feels like. But I've heard enough stuff to know that it really must be something really tough to be a black woman.
Well, I think
nowadays.
Also, I mean, even if you're, not fully black or light skin or whatever, you still have a struggle to face. But it is different from maybe somebody else that has, a darker skin color or whatever, but it's weird that, it's sort of like a temperature
Well, like
or something.
from what I understand, even once upon a time in Jamaica, there was like this effort to breed with somebody whiter than you on purpose. Just
And
to,
like I've heard these stories of like, like women bleaching their skin and
it's
stuff to try
crazy.
to like.
When I was in Pakistan, I saw advertisements for vagina bleaching. Like no joke, it was that. It was just make yourself whiter for him, and it was just fucked up, man. I don't know. On that note, I think
Love yourself.
I think this is a good place to end it for now.
Yeah.
There's not much more in that episode. It's late as fuck, so we're gonna record the next one at another point. It's Saturday night tonight. I don't know when this comes out, but early next week. And if you like it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, comment, let us know what you think on this stuff. If you have experiences to share, tell us stuff. We're just two white people who have no idea, trying to understand.
Share your story. We'd love to hear it.
All right. On that note, have a great day, night, whatever time it is. Peace.
Peace. Love you.